Hello my friends, and welcome back to Carpo's channel. And today's video, I guess I'm going to start off with the question, am I a bad friend? And that'll probably be something, I'm not sure what I'll title it yet, but something along those lines. First of all, I am speaking about myself, as well as posing the question for anybody who might, seek it out or search that. But it's easy for us to question whether or not we are good enough friends, whether or not we are calling up our friends to wish them well or seeing how they're doing. So in my situation, I'll kind of lay out the framework for where I'm coming from here. I have a few good friends, okay? A handful of really good friends that I love, that I respect, that I would do anything for if they needed my help. And all of the friends that I have, most of the friends that I have developed, I've known since I was at least in my late teens, early 20s. And we went to, various events, went hiking, did things together to bond as younger people. And when you can carry that friendship on into your, for years, if not decades on, then you can develop a really good relationship with somebody. That said, there becomes a time when we part ways for a period of time. I've had really good friends that we were inseparable, that we ended up not seeing each other for years. We'd go off and do their thing and I'd do mine. And, when I was younger, about 18, 19, I got in trouble for growing cannabis. I just had a few small plants at my mom's condominium. And I opened my door one day to go visit my girlfriend. I had just changed my lights over to my first blooming cycle. And then there's like cops standing at my door in plain clothes. They're like, hey, do you know who I am? And they asked if they could come in. I said, hell no, not unless you have a warrant. And then they produced a warrant and proceeded to search my place. That was just a wake-up call to me because I knew that there's no way these police could have known. The head cop was from a different town, the town where my other friends lived. So instantly I knew, of course, I was ratted out by somebody who was trying to save their own skin. This wasn't the only issue. This was the final straw. Before this, I'd had a couple of good friends who had been staying with me on and off. One of them ripped me off anyway, twice, letting him stay at my house when I went to work, came home, my jewelry, stuff was missing. He returned the stolen items at one time, I forgave him, then some stuff came up stolen again. And the reason why this is important is because it left a sour taste in my mouth about trusting people. And for a period of several years, from my early 20s into my 30s, at least 30, I really had no interest in making new friends. I had no interest in putting up with bullshit from people who I thought might be thieves or liars or cheats. And so I developed a strong value system against being a liar or against wronging other people. I'm one of those guys that just hates a rat. And cannot stand people who rat others out to save their own skin. If you get busted, deal with the shit, right? But anyhow, losing that trust, at the same time I'd met my wife. I was about 22. And we've been together for 20 years now. Now, I trust my wife more than anybody, of course. That's the way it should be. It's not always the way the relationships are, but I would never be able to be with someone that long that I didn't trust or respect. And I've always been a little standoffish about making new friends, but when you have a family, they're instantly your most, your biggest responsibility, and you kind of leave behind your old life for a while, especially if you're raising kids. And when I met my wife, she had a son who was 3 years old, so for me it was jumping into fatherhood instantly, and I was not prepared for that, but I did my best, and hopefully I did all right. But anyhow, as I got older, of course, some of my friends that I grew up with started having kids. One of my good friends, Tim, he was over here yesterday. He brought his kids over and they went and played. And his kids are about the same age as my kids. And he has a daughter and a son, and I have two sons, and then an older son who's 25 now, so he doesn't play at the park anymore. But getting the kids together when they're young is really important to making sure that they can interact and bond so they can make friends. But at the same time, we're teaching them what it means to be a good friend. And so, as I said, I'm a bad friend when it comes to keeping up with people's birthdays. I'm horrible about this. I'm really bad about remembering birthdays. And I even have one friend who, I know his birthday is March either 7th or 9th, and every year I've screwed it up for the last 20 years. It's because at one point it got mixed up in my head. those are small details, but they're important to people, that people remember and care about your life and your moments. Everybody's had a friend who, every time you talk to them, could be a friend, a relative, coworker, who, whenever you talk to them, all they can talk about is themselves. This is what happened to me here, this is what happened to me there. And a lot of these folks claim to be empathetic and say that they care about others, but really they never ask you how your life's going, and they never seem to care. The thing is, deep down in my heart and in my mind, I'm constantly consciously aware of how other people in my life are doing. I think about my mom, I think about my brother, I think about my wife when she's at work, my kids at school, and all the friends that I don't see very often. And they're all going through their own things, sometimes hardships, sometimes they're elated, sometimes depressed, just like me and just like you. We all go through some shit. It's really easy to just dismiss friends and say I don't need any, right? I could never do that myself. If a person wants to think that they can live in isolation their whole lives and that they don't need cooperation and connection, I think they're kind of missing the boat. But so as I said, I got screwed over, so I set my boundaries. And setting my boundaries, it allowed me to protect myself and my family. I stopped hanging out with a lot of people who were in my friend group, not necessarily people I spent a lot of time with before, but people who I would consider acquaintances through friends, who would ask, why don't you hang out with so-and-so? And my response would be something along the lines of, well, they got busted drunk driving several times, or so I don't want to ride with them, or they're always getting other people in troubles, or I don't trust them. And that was my way of protecting myself. And so the friends that I do have, I'm really grateful for. I care about them so much, but I feel like I don't do enough to express that. Even my own brother, who lives an hour away, I think about him all the time. And him and I, we have this brotherly, sibling, whatever it is. It's not rivalry, but of course, brothers 3 years apart, you have these preconceived notions and experiences that you went through growing up. We're completely different people now, but he's a lot like me in that way, in the sense that he's stubborn about, he says, this is how I see things, this is, these are the friends I want, and I'm not going to put up with bullshit. So both of us being kind of a no BS people, we kind of butt heads jokingly through text and whatnot when we talk, but when we're actually together, we get along really well. So it's really the message I want to convey here is we can't do it alone. It's really important to realize that. If you want to live your life alone, if you're watching this, you obviously aren't doing it alone. Because anybody who spends time watching videos is also interacting in one way or another with people, even if it's online. We have a desire to connect with people. And so we can kind of set aside that denial that, oh, I don't need anyone else. Once we move past that, say, okay, well, who do I want to surround myself with? And not only what kind of people do I want in my life, and what kind of people do I not want in my life, which is really important, but what kind of people want me in their life? You see what I'm saying? We get too tied up in what we consider a good friend instead of sometimes what we're doing wrong. I'm going to try to be better at being a friend. I'm going to try to keep in better contact with my friends and family. Have you ever noticed how, and this probably isn't true for everyone, but say somebody sends me or has a message on YouTube or elsewhere, and I might respond with a really long comment, and then a friend or a family member or something texts or sends a message, and it's just a quick reply. It's like I would have more to say to that other person that I know well than this person I don't, but for some reason we're most interested in getting people to see where we're coming from so they can know us better, because I consider a lot of you out there, I'd like to say friends. Some of the subscribers that I have that leave comments regularly, I read them all. I may not respond every time. Some of you are just as cocky as I am and call out my bullshit when I rarely have bullshit. And anyhow, you see my face every time you watch my video. Me talking to the camera, to me, is like talking to a friend, because I realize who's going to watch it on the other end. When I do my microphone recordings that I try to do just to voiceovers, it's very difficult. And that might sound weird to people. Like, well, it should be easier to talk on a voice recorder than on a camera. It's not, because I can see my face and I see you guys reflected through it. Even though I don't know who any of you are, or what your names are, or what you look like. And that makes it really hard, especially when somebody's like, oh, I had this screen name and I changed to this, and this is my email, and trying to remember each person, my memory just doesn't work that well. I really wish it did. But I guess I could work on that too. You can improve your memory about things. It's just that I feel like I can't cram enough of the crap in there. Or I don't want to, maybe. So the next part is to remember the kids. Now, during all of our, growing and learning in life, sometimes we fail to remember the kids. Not just teaching our own kids and other kids that friends are important. Not necessarily that line of thinking, but making friends with kids. I relate more to a lot of you younger kids out there, and I say kid meaning in your 20s, than I do to a lot of people in my own age group or older. And I'm Gen X, so I was born in '75. I'm kind of on this cusp of between the okay boomer generation and the damn millennial generation, and everybody's fighting amongst these. At least that's the illusion that the media puts out, that there's this fight going on between old and young people. Complete bullshit, totally fabricated. Same thing happened in the '60s with rock and roll music. And, it's just... The kids of today are much smarter than we give them credit for. And we're starting to realize that. But there's another side to this, that we overthink things. We start to live in isolation, not just from friends, but in our own minds. We kind of figure we know better than other people, and that, this person isn't up to my standards, so I'm not going to spend time with them. Look, I've had a lot of friends that are very uneducated, and a lot of friends that are maybe can't have horrible grammar or spelling skills. Some of the smartest damn people I've ever known. I don't buy into academic intelligence as having anything to do with being aware. Being smart, it happens regardless of what you learned in school. Got a lot of different forms of smarts. Some of the greatest academics that maybe, had a lot of friends, let's say, ended up being completely unaware of just how to live and be a person, in other words. We get so tied up with facts, is what I'm saying, and numbers and ideas and studies and research that we forget the very basic fundamentals of being a human, which is connection, community, bonding. Cooperation and criticism. That's what I should expect, we should all expect from a friendship. That's another thing that's important. Cooperation is important. Criticism, it often brings up this saying of, if you don't have something nice to say, then don't say anything at all. I don't agree with that at all. If you're just saying something mean or rude just for the sake of it, then yeah, shut your mouth. But constructive criticism is very important to our well-being and understanding who we are. When I get criticism on my videos or on a subject I talked about, or maybe I was wrong about something, sometimes, of course, it'll be like, hey, wait, okay, think it through. Maybe that's true. And the more times that you give in and say, yeah, maybe you're right, the more seeds are planted in our own minds and others that it's okay to disagree. And I say that because often people get in an argument about one stupid subject, and they decide not to see the person forever. Or they say, I don't want to deal with this person, I don't want to be friends with you anymore. Completely stop interacting just because one person can't handle the discussion or one person gets offended by something that's said. I get over things pretty damn quick. I still wonder and I'm curious about why people are the way they are, but I don't sit and stew and ponder, oh my God, I got wronged by this person. But I used to. And when I started my YouTube channel, that was kind of at the tail end of my egotistical self-protection phase, where these days, if somebody says something I don't agree with or says something about me, just say, hey, I disagree, whatever, you're wrong, move along. I would spend weeks arguing back and forth with people who were just trying to get my goat, and online back. And then I learned a lot of lessons from that. And I think that's really important because all of us are learning those lessons. Even if you don't comment or leave comments or comment on comments or post videos, you still see them. All of us see the YouTube comment section and see how toxic it is. And one thing I wanted to say about that is that it's not as bad as it looks, okay? First off, open your heart and share with people. Be honest about your feelings, and it really takes away the ammunition of other people when they're trying to call you out and say, no, you're actually this way or that way. Say, yeah, maybe I am. And they can't handle it, and they move on. In other words, a troll can't troll if you're completely open and don't care what they think. And this is in something we all... The aspect of this that's... scary for some people is that emotions scare a lot of people away. If you're super open with how you feel, it scares a lot of people away. So a lot of the most well-intentioned, well-rounded, clear-thinking, empathetic people don't post comments online and tend to not interact with the internet in the same way that somebody who stands on their soapbox on the corner preaching out of their Bible, for example. And this was an actual incident that happened to me when I was younger. I've mentioned this before, but I was about 16, wearing a tie-dye, I had long hair, walking down Portland Street, and this guy started screaming at me from his literal soapbox, standing up there preaching his Bible. By the end of the discussion, he told me I was going to hell because of how I was dressed and my long hair. That gave me an understanding and a taste in my mouth about a person who wants to be heard quite often has the least to say. And this has continuously shown itself to be true. And the reason I say this is because on the internet, there are people who feel like they have no voice, no friends, no real connection in this world, and therefore they can dedicate all of their time to posting bullshit and making people miserable, trolling folks, and trying to defend it as, oh, it's keeping people honest. And, I understand assholery, okay? There's no bullshit justification for being mean to somebody in hopes that you will offend them or cause them upset for no other reason than to be a jerk. Now, if a person is a jerk and they're treating others like shit, that's when it's okay maybe to, tear into them a little bit. But picking on people because they seem weak, it's a sign of a person who doesn't have a true connection in their life. A lot of depression, anxiety, early deaths have been due to people who are lonely. Loneliness kills. That sounds ridiculous, but you know what? If we were to say stress kills 40 years ago, they'd say, whatever, stress is part of life. Stress really does kill you. It actually, your body, your digestion slows down, you produce more cortisol. It causes your brain to basically shut down and you go into fight or flight. And many of us are in this stage all the time because we're constantly worried about this or that or how we're viewed. And by letting go of other people's opinions, you just stop giving a shit. But you can't let go so far to where you become just a grimy fool who doesn't care about himself or others. You still need that feedback from other people. It's a fine line to walk, but I guess my message here is to try to find and cherish those friends in your life and family in your life. You don't have to agree with everyone all the time. If you do argue with folks or disagree with folks, just be able to laugh at it and move on. Don't yell at each other and make it turn into a big battle. I think one of the saddest things in our society is couples that live together that fight constantly. The idea that if I came home and my wife was going to scream at me every day, or my husband, whatever it might be, I couldn't live like that. But we become trapped, and then we become used to it. All habits can be changed over time. One of the worst habits we have is just taking the beating from society, from other people. The other extreme is to go to the victim stance and just say, oh, the world's out to get me. Oh, all my problems are so big. And, a lot of folks fall into that, thinking they're the only ones with problems in the world. Well, guess what? A lot of us have problems too. We just don't sit and complain about them all the time. Every one of us has health issues, family problems, money problems. It's just part of life. And when we connect on that level, it makes for better relationships all the way around. So, keep your friends, cherish your family, do everything you can to keep it together. You're not going to be able to keep everybody happy. There's no way. There will always be some people who you just don't get along with, and that's fine. You can still love them. But one good friend, if you have one good friend in your life, I say you're doing all right. Those are my thoughts. Yours are welcome. Please leave a comment. Let me know how you think about this situation, how you think. And thanks to my subscribers. And thank you to my few patrons on Patreon. And thank you to, as I say, everybody who makes this channel worth keeping. Peace out.